It's Corey Poirier back again. That is Emily Harrison waving to you. And really excited today to bring Emily onto the show as well. We've had some amazing guests already today. Emily is definitely no exception. I'm a big fan of the work that Emily's been doing that I've been fortunate enough to discover, I guess, just in the last couple of years. And so really excited to delve into her quote in the book today. But before we go there, Emily, where I'd like to start, for those people that might be tuning in and discovering you for the first time, I always feel you can share your story better than somebody else. Can you tell us a little bit about your background for those people who may be just learning about Emily Harrison?
Yes, absolutely. Well, nice to meet any of you who are coming across my path for the first time. My name is Emily Harrison, and the guests that you've had on today are two friends of mine. Nick Pereira is my partner at the Akashic Academy, which I'm going to tell you guys about, and we've worked with Mark Mawhinney before, so it's such a pleasure, let me just say, to be in the company of these gentlemen and you today, Corey. I'm so proud of you and what you're accomplishing. Yes, you and I have run across each other in the past year. We've discovered each other's work. So, guys, what I do is I am a specialist in the Akashic Records. And I am the founder and director and partners with Nick in the Akashic Academy, where we are bringing together different practices of awakening our consciousness, right? Of spirituality, of stepping into what Christ consciousness means. You know, there's this big energetic movement about understanding energy and the principles of energy and how they're at work in our body and our consciousness. And this is actually very ancient knowledge. It's just been suppressed for a long time. So we are bringing about a place where people can come together and learn about these ancient mystery techniques to awaken their own consciousness. The Akashic Records specifically are the realm of space-time, different realm of consciousness than we exist on in our day-to-day existence here, where every single detail has been programmed. It's like the information realm. You could liken it to the internet, the cosmic internet. And every detail from our past, our present, and every possible future outcome recorded from a space of unconditional love and zero judgment. So the way that God sees us, right? As we move into Christ consciousness, we understand more about, like what Nick said earlier, about being truly in service to other people. And I love how Nick described the subtle energies of the shifts. When we begin to serve, the shift happens somewhere along the way where it kicks in and we're no longer training our brain. And there's that subtle recognition of how easy and natural and good it feels to be in that space of service of others. So all of these different ideas of what it means to come together and really evolve Christ-like or Buddha-like, or in Hare Krishna, like Nick talks about, you know, being in that mode of Christ consciousness and service to others. And my specialty of existing in that space is by using the Akashic Records, which when we learn to tune in, every single person has that ability to tune in to this glorious space. It's like an etheric library of information where we can receive healing, we can understand more deeply the dynamics that are playing out in our life, which are causing us to create certain patterns, to experience certain things, whether it's dis-ease, whether it's lack, we can reprogram those things. There are so many different ways to go about these ideas of understanding ourselves more deeply and stepping more dynamically into who we're meant to be as human beings. And that's really what you and I have in common, Corey, is because you are teaching people through your book to understand the why of who they are and how to implement that into our life so that we can be joyful and happy and feel connected and release these lower vibrating energies that are making us depressed and sick, and to fight with each other, quite frankly.
So, Emily, this brings up, and you and I have had this conversation, just a brief conversation about, when people say, best way to say it, I think we said it like woo-woo, when people are like,
very woo-woo.
yeah, and I think that's a good thing, but sometimes people go, okay, if that person's not woo-woo, they might not understand this type thing. And I know I definitely have woo-woo in me, and my girlfriend is for sure. I mean, she's a Reiki master and who does energy clearing and smudging, so clearing negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a long journey for me as kind of an average dude who at first was like, what's this all about? Mm-hmm. To actually now seeing how this impacts my life. But Emily, I'd like to start in before we even dive into your quote in the book. For those people that are saying that, like, what's she talking about? I haven't heard of this before. Well, first of all, does the person have to, let's say it this way, do they have to believe, first of all, in this and understand this to get the reward or benefits from it?
No, but it's helpful. Like anytime that we have belief is a tricky thing. Tends to attach us to certain outcomes. And granted, you can use that for your benefit. If you want to attach a certain belief system to positive progress in your life, you're definitely going to experience more of that. But you don't actually even have to believe. This is just energy. It's breaking, and it's an experience more than anything. For people who out there like, I don't know if I believe. Belief, you can really take that out of it until you experience something. Like I watched a flat earth documentary recently, and I'm not going to stand here and say that I'm a flat earth believer, but there's some really interesting and compelling evidence. And the biggest takeaway that I took from this documentary was, if you are not having your own experience and then checking in with yourself and seeing how you feel, if you're just allowing yourself to be programmed by what you think is normal, that's a time when you need to check yourself. So for people out there who would automatically dismiss anything because it's outside of their box of normal, hopefully we can learn to see that as a signal that we're not actually thinking on our own. So I would invite everyone to have their own experience, because once you have an experience and you allow yourself to feel the subtle energies and tune in a way that maybe you haven't before, it has a process of its own. The aliveness that is felt will begin to bloom inside of you. So it's all about trusting your curiosity and recognizing there are no synchronicities. So, I mean, there are no coincidences. It's all synchronicity. So if you're here listening and you are like, oh, that just might be a little too woo-woo for me, that's an opportunity to dive in, to expand your awareness, maybe down a realm or an avenue that you haven't walked before. And it's fun, isn't it, Corey? Isn't now that Shelly's got you in woo-woo and I've pulled you in a little woo-woo a bit, it's pretty fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I have to say, if I'm being a little bit fair to on my side in terms of how it started, it's been a journey that even before Shelly and I got together because we knew each other. But even when I started doing yoga years ago, because I was looking for some sort of answer to balance problems I had. And then when I was looking for meditation, because I was so constantly on edge and always going the go and too high energy. And so those were steps toward that. So I think I had to kind of go through levels. And what I would tell people is, it's like anything else. I mean, you might not be at that spot yet where you're ready to say, I understand or get this. But what I will say is, even if it's an evolution, it's, first of all, it's a great journey. But secondly, it will come. But I think you have to, at least like you said, Emily, open yourself up a little bit to it and just say, maybe even just ask yourself the question, what if? What if there's something to this? And what I would also say, I would invite people to think about this, and this, I don't know if it helps somebody else, but it helped me when we talk about, say, energy, is to think about it in, what I always say is, like, I don't know why this comes to mind, and I think I shared this with you before, but there's a wrestler named Diamond Dallas Page who teaches yoga, and his yoga is called YRG, I think, Yoga for Regular Guys. And he's this tattooed wrestler who's teaching a bunch of other, whether it's tattooed wrestlers or bikers or what have you, to do yoga. But what his idea is, look, I'm a regular dude. I've been wrestling on TV. I can't get, like, almost like I'm a quote unquote manly man. And here I am doing yoga. And I always liken it to that, to understanding energy. You can be a regular dude, but maybe you need somebody to show it to you and explain it to you in a way that logically, I get it. So as an example, to me, what really spoke to me was when I started considering the fact that if you have a dog in your house that gets along with everybody, and then you have one person that tries to come to the house and the dog will not let them in, or they come into the room and every time they come into the room, the dog's demeanor changes, but it was fine with 10 other people. What else is that other than an energy that the dog's picking up? Or if you think of a baby that'll let 20 people hold them, but not the 21st, and it's always the same person, what is that if it's not an energy? And I'm not saying it could be a trigger or a red flag, but it might also be that they're carrying negative energy from somebody else or from the fights they have throughout the day with maybe their spouse. But I think that, to me, or if you go into a room and when a couple's been fighting already, what else could that be other than energy? So I think for me to see that there's moments when energy proves it to be real, I think that's what really made it sellable, if you will, to me. And that's what started my journey, if that makes sense, Emily.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. For me, it was almost like understanding like the mathematics and science behind vibrations and the idea of law of attraction and magnetism And so thinking of everything in terms of vibration, including our feelings, including that negative energy that you talked about, that someone's carrying when they've been fighting with their spouse, and our being, this human body is the most sophisticated piece of equipment, computer there is here on the planet. We have the ability to detect these subtle energies, but it's a matter of bringing our awareness and training ourselves in our normal day-to-day life as we're going through and we're learning and our process is unfolding. There are many opportunities to stay connected to the very 3D experience rather than to get outside of ourselves and experience subtle energies. But that's what the growth of our consciousness is all about. And for me, that's why it's such a fun journey, because it's a little outside of the normal, but but I feel like I'm a very normal person. So I feel like people can relate to me. I mean, I'm a mom. I teach art at my kids' school. I'm running my business from home. I try to share this information in a way that can be really applicable to our lives, right? It's one to experience this woo-woo, these ideas, but what does it actually mean on a day-to-day basis? Well, if you can learn to manage your internal energy and step into a more collected, kind, sensitive version of yourself, dude, your life is going to get so much better. So, setting that goal of being relatable and practical yet profound is really the platform that I want to stand on as I share this idea of woo-woo with other people.
I love it. I got to get some sort of tagline for almost like the woo-woo for regular people or something, because what's interesting, and we're going to talk about your quote in the book. The book, obviously, I'm sort of in book mode, let people know it's out there. And
Yeah.
I actually talk. So my third section in the book is actually, and I don't know how, I've got to figure out how to define this section, but I talk about it in the sense that it helps people figure out how to get more meaning in their life and business. But I dive into things like yoga and meditation and how they benefited me. But I like to think, even when I talk about energy and negative and positive energy, surrounding yourself with the right people, I like to think I took a practical, like you said, everyday person view of it and said, hey, guys, I didn't believe in this before. And the truth is, it doesn't matter if I do now. Here's what we know is, like, in other words, knowing that if you surround yourself with more negative people than positive, you're going to have a more negative experience or have a bigger challenge coming out of that. I mean, to me, it's hard to argue that, but that still comes back to energy. To me, it's negative energy in your life versus positive. So I tried to take that view of something that's very practical. And somebody we've had on our show as well, which has helped this a lot. We've had him on the show, but James Redfield, who I believe you're familiar with, Celestine Prophecy author. Part of the actual part of, and this is sort of a little, I guess, promotion for the book at the same time, but part of the thing I announced is that anybody that buys the book at a certain level actually will get to attend a webinar between me and James. And James, the Celestine Prophecy has sold over 20 million copies. So we're talking it's impacted a lot of lives. And to get to spend an hour with James is a pretty big deal, because you'll probably, if you Google James, you'll notice he doesn't do a lot of media. He's not out there doesn't do a lot of talks. So to get the time with him is a pretty cool thing. Why I bring this all up, though, is James has also, through the Celestine Prophecy and then on our show, also done a good job, I think, of showing people. Because James is, again, he's very practical person. And when you hear him talk, okay, what he's sharing in a very practical way. So what made me think of this, Emily, is when you mentioned about coincidences, what he calls them in the book are mysterious coincidences.
Right.
But his whole premise is they're not coincidences at all. And what his takeaway in the book, which I love, is the fact that most of us let these coincidences go by, quote unquote coincidences, and ignore them. Where what he's found is one of the best ways to live your life, whether it's personally or professionally, is to be aware of these coincidences, and then actually find ways to benefit from them, and not in a financial way, but to bring them into your life, to make more of them. Maybe you meet somebody at a networking event, you get their card, and what do most people do? They never reach out and follow up. The card sits there collecting dust. Maybe you say, there was a reason I met this person. You reach out to them, and eventually, like yourself and Nick, maybe you start working together on business or what have you. So anyway, going back to your original point, I think it's important for us to recognize there's a reason these things are happening in the way they are regularly, and I don't think they are coincidences, and I think that you don't either. So that's just a food for thought.
Yeah, food for thought, baby. Okay, so Corey, I have to say, I'm so excited to talk about the quote in the book, because it's going to feel like new to me because I can't remember what the quote is. And this has happened more than once with your book, because I remember when it came out before, I'm like, what is the quote? What is the quote? And if I could just tell a little prequel story to how I even found you and reached out and gave you the quote, I think it's fun. I think it's fun just to share a little piece of my journey. So as I've been growing and sharing and creating a platform on social media, you learn the formula, the tips and the tricks and the techniques. And so establishing yourself as an expert in your field is one of the main places that you start, right? So you reach out to people like Corey, you get on other people's shows, you talk about what it is you're doing. And I saw Corey giving out a call to action for quotes from leaders. And I had to go through that moment of saying, am I really a leader? Am I qualified to give a quote? And so, of course, since my modality is the Akashic Records, I go into the Akashic Records and I'm like, okay, I need a quote to give to Corey for this book. And I didn't know Corey. Corey and I did not know each other at the time. And bam, like as soon as I went in, this quote came out and I wrote it down and I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. I'm going to send that off. And so I sent it off to you. And for the life of me, I cannot remember that. It doesn't stick in my mind, which is interesting because it's how I know that it was a divinely inspired quote, because it came from someplace outside of me in that moment that I asked for it. And Emily can't pull it up in the files to remember what it is that I even said to you. So that's the backstory with me in this quote. And I'm really excited to hear what I said.
Awesome stuff. So, and just to kind of, I guess, tag on and put the bookend to what we were just talking about, well, all the things we covered about energy and setting the preface for this and mysterious coincidences. Again, that goes back to the question, was it a coincidence that you saw that I was looking for quotes at the exact time you did, rather than somebody else seeing that and taking that spot, so there's a reason that happened. So let's share what your quote is.
Okay, let's hear it.
And then we can explore it. So your quote, Emily, was, awakening happens as we learn to observe ourselves. Enlightenment happens as we learn to love others. So do you remember that quote now, or
I do remember it. And I think it's perfectly synchronized with what we've been talking about already when you talk about, Corey, getting to that space where you can observe the subtle energies and you begin to have an awareness, a deeper awareness of the dog and the energy that he's getting off of the person that comes in the room that's carrying the negative energy. There comes a point when we have to stop being so plugged into the matrix and so attached to every moment that we don't observe and see how things are playing out. So that's the first step in this idea of awakening, of going woo-woo, right? Is when you begin to observe the energies in a way that you yourself are not so attached and emotionally living out the circumstances, because it allows you to see from a different perspective. And that is so important in our lives. So much of the trauma that we allow ourselves to experience is because of whatever perspective that we've put on a situation. And there's always another perspective. So as we can learn to detach and observe, that's when the process of awakening really starts to happen. And whether it interprets itself in your life as energy, and you start doing energy work and reading cards and using, things like your sage and your crystals, or you begin to explore more on the 3D level in just terms of what does this mean in my life and with my relationships, and how am I more responsible than I was recognizing before? However it plays out in your life is perfect for you. But the point is to start finding that level of observation in your life.
I love that. And so, Emily, I guess then the other side, if we talk about practical ways to do this, because I know people listening in and watching are always saying, okay, how do I sort of bring this into my life? This whole idea of sort of awakening and let's even say being in the moment and being detached is another area you mentioned. So for you, I mean, you're, and I think we talked about this before, you're an empath. So you feel things in maybe a bigger way than other people might in circumstances. So you're probably naturally, correct me if I'm wrong on this, by the way, you're probably naturally almost forced to be in the moment at times. But for somebody who's maybe lost and caught up in all the busyness that is the world today, first question is, are there some strategies they can apply, or are there ways they can apply to their life to start actually being more in the moment? Maybe we'll go there first and then talk.
Yes. And it's so easy too. And it's been something that I've stumbled onto and started to share on my own Facebook page, just breathing. Okay, bringing awareness to the breath. The breath is actually the bridge between the physical body and the subtle layers of energy that we cannot see. The breath is something that every single person has. It's working on autopilot the majority of the day, which is how we are in our lives, right? You see the pattern. So bringing awareness to the breath, which is what really allows you to experience life for just a few moments every single day, will begin to sharpen your awareness, because again, you're tuning in and you're strengthening that bridge, that ability to cross over between the physical and the spiritual, living your life being attached to every moment and being able to observe it, let's say. So as I'm learning to create my own business on Facebook, my mentors say, get on and do a video every single day on Facebook. And Corey, you'll know that when you're in this position of sharing and you want to deliver people good information on a day-to-day basis, after a while, you're like, okay, what am I going to say today? And I had gotten to that point, and so go into the records, what am I going to say today? And they say, just breathe. Give people an experience of just showing up to breathe. And that has taken off into something that I do several times a week, just showing up on Facebook and doing synchronized breath with people. So it gives people an opportunity who hang out with me, who follow me, to take that pause in their day and right there in that moment. And there's a cool thing that happens when we synergize, when we're doing it together. Doing it on your own is great. Doing it with some others is just going to increase the power and the expansion that you're creating for yourself. But it's so easy, and it takes a couple minutes. And I actually do it live on Facebook often with people. It's that easy and practical.
Wow, I love that. And so I guess then, Emily, what I'll ask as well, if we kind of dive into, and by the way, I guess I should mention too, one of the things that I used to do, so I guess it's probably not the better way to do it is the way you're doing it, but I used to wear an elastic band. And then basically when I wasn't being in the moment, I noticed I was drifting, I would like pull the band, because to me that was a practical way to pull myself back.
Right.
But I worked at the time. But if we go to the other side, which is the detachment side, and I know you mentioned a bit of it in there, but I'm thinking there's a great, I was reading Deepak's book again recently, The 7 Laws, Spiritual Laws of Success. And he talks about the law of detachment. And that was the law, every time I read that book, that speaks most to me. And obviously, for some reason, I got to figure out what that reason is. But it comes to the idea that, people listening thinking, okay, I have struggles with finances. I have struggles with this. I have struggles with that. And then maybe they're hoping for something to come in. Maybe it's whatever that might be, like income tax return. They're hoping that they're going to get money back this year.
Yes.
Whatever that is, how, is there a way or strategies that you recommend that they can start detaching from, I hope this happens, or this better happen, or whatever it might be? Because I think from a sales perspective, it's just like whenever I used to be in sales and I was working on this really big order, and all of a sudden I noticed my mind was so focused, it was so attached to, if I win this, and if I didn't, it would destroy me for like 3 weeks of sales. I would just sell, I was shut down because I lost this big deal. So are there strategies that we can use to detach more, or what do you recommend? Or is it go back to the breathing and meditation?
This is a tough one, because, and here's the reason why this is a tough one, and then I hear myself saying, don't even say it's a tough one, Emily, because then you reinforce that. Here's why it can be difficult. We are programmed into a belief system that says there's lack everywhere. Okay, there's a brilliant documentary on Netflix called Unacknowledged. And it talks about a lot of extraterrestrial contact, which I love talking about the ETs, but I'll stay on topic today. And it talks about Nikola Tesla and the idea of free energy, and how our economy is completely constructed around the false belief that energy costs us money. And it's amazing how they break it down, but we begin to realize that the fighting, and when Nick talked about in his interview, if we got to the right place as a society and had a redistribution of the wealth, there is plenty here for every single one of us. There is no need for anyone to be in poverty, anyone to be hungry. There's just no need with the abundance that's on this planet. But we're programmed with these beliefs. And not only is it a part of our programming as a human being on the planet at this time, but it's a part of the collective programming. And so it can take a while to unplug from this. Or it can happen in an instant, depending on how much of it you're ready to receive in a moment. But I have found my journey has been that I've had to work on ideas of lack. And like you said, when you don't get that big deal, or for me, before it was doing this kind of spiritual work, I was in Hollywood. I'd be up for a big role, and then I would be like this close to getting it and then not getting it. And it took time to like emotionally recuperate. So that's the easiest thing to recognize is, one, when you've been through it enough, you know that within a couple days to a week, you're going to feel better anyway. So why spend this time wallowing and feeling so crappy right now, right after you come off of a loss or a rejection of some kind? Because eventually time is going to help you feel better. There are things that you need to do that are outside of the actual circumstance to keep yourself primed for those conditions. When they arise in your life, because they're going to come. Life is going to ebb and flow. You're going to have some moments of big victory, and you're going to have some moments where it doesn't feel like that. It feels like a defeat, but there's always stuff to be learned and gained and to grow from in every single thing that we experience. But things like doing yoga, like you talked about, regular meditating, taking care of your body, putting good food in your body, food with powerful life force energy, doing these kind of things to take care of yourself is going to make you much more primed to handle those ebbs and flows that happen in your life. There is a yoga sutra that talks about not only the detachment, but how important it is that we have that unending pursuit of what it is that we want to create, paired with detachment to result. And those two forces together create a really powerful dynamic imbalance that allow us to create and create more easily because we are naturally detached. But that's a big one. That is like working on yourself. It's not 101. It's not like the entry levels of self-realization and discovery. It's high level stuff. And it can take processing it from more than one angle before we get really good at it. But there is freedom on the other side of a limited mindset, and you can get there. People's path look very different. You can do energy healing. You can work out. Like I said, take care of yourself. All the many different paths up this mountain, but you have to be dedicated to a practice.
Yeah, I love that. And I have to say what I've done too is, for me, I guess if we go back to some steps that I used, I used to, and I mean, I do it still now, but I used to kind of use my gratitude journal to help with that, in the sense that I would be grateful. How I kind of did it though, I was also grateful for what I had now, but I would think about, and I would even go back and read testimonials from people that said, you helped me in this way. Mm-hmm. And then I could have gratitude for those situations. And then I could do what you said, Emily, which is Steve Jobs has this great talk about joining up our dots. I could join up my dots and see that a lot of the biggest tragedies or mistakes or setbacks were actually what turned into my biggest moments and precious moments and greatest moments. And so by looking at that perspective, I was able to detach, because I was able to say, you know what, when it happened last time, it seemed like the worst thing in the world. And then, like you said, then you realize these things happen and we go through an up and down. So for me, looking at the situations I had in the past, being grateful that the crappy things that happened turned into some of the best things, and actually writing that down, those are some exercises that also help me detach. But I will say, like you said, it's still, and I think it's why I resonate the most with it in his book, it's still the one I struggle with the most. And it's still the hard.
Yeah, we all have the old Achilles heels, don't we? There's always, learning. I don't know, when I talked about enlightenment is when you reach a level, and I don't know how I remember it is enlightenment is when you learn to love yourself. Because when we truly learn to love ourselves and we learn to love others, we tend to start slowly melting a lot of those Achilles heels, those areas where it's really tough for us. But there's always more room to grow. There's always more room to love ourselves more deeply, to accept ourselves more deeply. And once we really create that pattern for ourselves, we can give it to other people. And for me, those are the levels of enlightenment and like service, being service oriented that Nick was talking about, that I feel like as a society we're progressing to. But it's a journey, right? And we're all learning these different things about ourselves in the way that we're learning them, so that we can be more observant, take better care of ourselves, take better care of each other, and learn to shift into being a more positive overall a vibration. I mean, having a positive mindset will help you get over those low points and those points of when you feel like you haven't done something the way you wanted to or failed. Amazingly well too. They're all so divinely designed to help us learn and grow.
So, Emily, as we wind down, I have maybe some key questions for you, if you will, that
Okay.
I normally ask on our show, and I want to pose them to you here. So, first of all, how do you define success? And I say this, I've had conversations actually just I think today with Mark. We were talking about some people define it, and I actually did with Nick as well about
Mm-hmm.
material wealth, and you probably heard that part where I said in all my interviews, it's rare that the people that have actually had material wealth talk about it or focus on it because I think they
Mm-hmm.
discovered it isn't what they thought it would be when they were yearning for it
Mm-hmm.
or earning for it. What, from your perspective, how do you define success and what does it sort of mean to you?
I define success as just being happy and finding happiness. I think one of the reasons that, from a woo-woo perspective of why souls even incarnate on this planet, there are lots of like big main points that we're here learning. One is about manifesting and how we create with our energetic vibration, with our thoughts and our emotions. The other is just learning to choose to be happy and especially right now on the planet, because when I talked earlier about the societal programs and the paradigms, and Nick talked about so many people are struggling to find their happiness, and they're popping pills and they're doing things that they can to numb the unhappiness. Really finding your joy and being in a vibrational state of peace, love, and joy, and enjoying your experience here is a successful life, in my opinion. And it doesn't take money and a lot of material things. Actually, I'm finding that as I get older and, continue to evolve on my journey, I want less things. Like I don't want to have to do a lot of cleaning of those things and maintaining of those things. I just want to be. And so what's important to me is shifted and changed. When I was back in my time in Hollywood, I can guarantee you that part of my drive in Hollywood was because I got paid a lot of money for acting jobs, and I wanted that to happen consistently so that I could buy big houses and have cars and amazing vacations. And recognizing as I move along my journey, what's actually important. There's a subtle shift in me that just really wants less material things. I think that success is being happy and really finding that and truly being it. Because there are those ebbs and flows in life all the time.
And now, how about this big word called legacy? I love getting people's thoughts on this in the sense, and I'll explain what I mean here. On the show, I've had people that have said legacy is something that will just happen after I'm gone, or I add in, it's not just when you're gone, it's what people say about you behind your back when you're not around too. But legacy, I have some people on the show that say I can't control it, so I don't even pay attention to it. And I have other people that you can tell they direct it. In other words, they want to make certain decisions because they feel that'll be part of their legacy. So I guess my question out of that, Emily, is what side of the fence do you sit on in relation to creating a legacy?
Okay, so this is what's just flooding into my mind as we're chatting about legacy. So, and I'm gonna go full woo woo for you guys out there. So, when I talk about the collective consciousness, this is actually an energetic grid there that exists, kind of like connecting all of us, and it is programmed based on your thoughts, your feelings, how you respond to experiences. There's a thing known in bees. Inside the comb of the hive, where when one bee acquires a new skill, it instantaneously, within nanoseconds, becomes available through consciousness to the rest of the hive of bees. We are very, very similar. Human beings have that ability to share consciousness with each other, and we do it through this grid of energy. Your legacy is however you are programming that grid. So whoever you are, whatever energetic dust you are leaving behind from your emotions in every single moment is collected through all of space and time, and it's running through this grid. And if you're leaving that grid with polluted energy because you're in a bad mood today, or because you fought with somebody, or because you can't quite grasp on to lightness of being quite like you should, then you're not leaving a legacy for this planet that you probably want to leave. What kind of legacies do we want to leave? We want to spread joy and happiness and peace and success. So we have to be that in every single moment. So who you are being in every single moment is your legacy, because it is programming the grid. Full woo-woo
Wow.
just blew my connection. Rhonda's here.
That's awesome. I noticed that too. So my very last official question, and then of course I want to
Okay.
ask you how we can learn more. People have probably noticed that I've had, with your interview especially, I've had the book link up for most of the time. So if people want to learn more about quotes like Emily's in the book, how they can grab a copy of the book, it's all there at thebookofwhy.com. But before we jump ahead to that, Emily, my last official question is, if you were able to sit across from a younger version of yourself, an 18-year-old, 16-year-old, maybe that young actress, what would you tell her if you could give her one piece of life advice based on what you've learned in the years since?
Oh, this is a tough one. I think that for me, something that's helped the most is really just letting go of the self-doubt and to be able to discern my own subconscious energy patterns in that mode of observation, like we talked about, on a deeper way. And if I could, and it's taken so long, I don't know that I could impart in one conversation with her. If I could, I would just tweak it. I would go in her brain and tweak all of that, all of the self-doubt and the second guessing, because once you get over that, baby, whew, you soar. But that was probably the hardest thing for me, is really overcoming self-doubt and having a lower perspective of myself. And if I don't know, like I said, I don't even know, listen to me, I don't even know if I can put it into words, all the different ways that I went about looking and examining and processing and releasing that kind of energy. But if I could go back and just tweak it for her, if I could give her the hive method and just like zap it into her consciousness, I would. That's what I'd give her.
Well, and it's funny because I used to follow up this question with, would she listen? And then the secondary part is, if she did listen, the challenge is it would change who you are today if you believe in the butterfly effect. So there's a whole bunch of variables that follow that question. But that's why I don't ask those first. I want to hear what a person would give themselves as advice, because once you add in those other variables, it changes the answer. So Emily Harrison, this has been an absolute pleasure. Never enough time. I'll call it a to be continued with your permission.
Absolutely.
Well, until the next time, though, I want to leave people with something. So maybe I'll ask you this two-part question. Okay. One, what advice would you leave people with, or what comment would you leave people with based on either your quote or what you'd like them to take away from what we shared today? And then how can we connect with you further?
What I'd like to leave you guys with is just knowing, and you ladies, guys and gals, you're in the exact right place that you need to be for whatever is unfolding in your life. If you feel like anything is off or you've gone down a wrong path, the only shift that you need to make is in a perspective, and recognize that everything is so divinely constructed, and you are right where you need to be in terms of wanting to open up and explore and find deeper meaning in your life. It's why you're here. It's why you're drawn to Corey. It's why you're drawn to this interview. So trust that and learn to follow that curiosity. And if that curiosity leads you to my website, askyourrecords.com is where you can find out more about what's going on with me and the Akashic Records. There are opportunities to learn how to access the records. There are opportunities for private sessions if you're interested in energy healing. And there are also opportunities to study not only the Akashic Records, but to dive in and learn about your chakras, about your clair senses, which are our psychic senses. Those are like muscles that all of us have that we can exercise. So reach out to me via my website, askyourrecords.com, if you're interested in knowing more. And Corey, thank you so much for having me. It never is enough time. I love hanging out with you. And I'm really proud of you too. What you've accomplished really cool things, and it's a pleasure to be a part of that. So thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Emily. Namaste. And also, I have Sprocket with me here. I'm just showing him right now to the camera. He said, Namaste. I'll see if I can get him to do that. Namaste. I'm sort of doing it. But he happened to be, I'm usually on the road when I'm doing these interviews, and today I'm working from home. And we were talking about the challenges sometimes of doing the interviews from home. So I knew Sprocket was going to start barking, and unless I picked him up and put him on my knee. But he's so tiny that. So I just thought that he should probably get to be part of the act too.
Yes,
so Emily, this is awesome. This has been a pleasure. Bye from me, as I mentioned. Bye from Sprocket. There's his little wave. And other than that, until next time, we'll wave the flag for Emily and keep sharing the great message of all the great things she's doing. Thank you, everybody. If you want to learn more about the book, again, the easiest way, go to thebookofwhy.com. You'll find Emily's quote in there in the printed copy. Well, in each copy, but if you want to get a printed copy for yourself, you'll find Nick's quote in there. We had Nick on earlier. You'll find Mark's quote as well. A lot of great company in this book, almost 400 quotes by thought leaders. So thank you so much, Emily, for sharing today. Thanking you for being a part of my journey. And until next time, keep making magic happen for people.
Bye. Thank you, Corey.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks, Emily.